Wow, what do we look like?
Oh, wow. Super bleached out. Hey, friends.
Hello.
Sorry, so bleached out
Happy
here.
Sunday.
We've got some, uh, so we're trying this at noon, which I know isn't working for some people. So we're going to switch to a different time. The sun will move in just a little bit and we won't be so bleached out. But yeah, another
It's
reason
okay.
not to
Think
do
of it as
this.
like an old film thing or something.
Oh,
Don't people do
yeah.
that on purpose?
Yeah, it does
Yeah.
have that look,
We're
doesn't
intentionally making ourselves look like this.
it?
Yeah.
Retro.
Yeah. Something like that.
So it's, as you probably knew, we got sick a couple weeks ago. And so uh, we've had this super cold spell here in Wisconsin. And we haven't been able to get out to do any of our new videos, which we're super excited about. We have two of those made. They're like little mini movies. And we're they're upcoming. So we're excited to announce those to you fairly soon. But
As soon as
yeah,
we can get out and do a few more.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say it's been, in the negative Fahrenheit for us here. And that was really hard
Hey,
for our
Becky.
coughs and stuff. So, hi, Becky.
Hey, oh my
Hello.
gosh. Cool to see
Yay.
you here,
Hi,
Survival
people.
Theory. Sean.
Anya. Yay. You know how to say
Anya.
her name?
Anya, I know. Oh.
Oh, gosh.
So today we were going to do a story. We're going to start with one story. But this story is going to lead into hopefully a discussion here. And
You go. It's your story.
should I kind of launch?
Yeah.
Hey, so as you'll see, this story is going to launch us into a discussion, hopefully, about uh, leave no trace versus
Hey, Johan.
leave no trace and that kind of idea versus being really hands-on with nature. And maybe you and I actually have a slightly different
Although
viewpoint, but we'll see.
it's important to define your terms.
Yeah.
So, a lot of times you can get into a discussion and maybe a disagreement with someone, not realizing that you are just defining the same word differently and you actually agree.
That's usually what happens when you and I disagree.
Yeah.
We find that,
Wait,
we
it's
mean the same
semantics.
thing.
Yeah.
So, hey, Jimmy. So, yeah, let's see how this goes. We're going to start with this story, and I'm going to take us back to when I was, probably 11, 12 years old.
I'm laughing at you because you have this period of your life where you remember virtually nothing.
Oh, I have a terrible memory for,
Yeah.
and yet there's these stories that really stand out.
Oh, there's some good ones.
Yeah, I guess.
So
Chasing
tell us,
turkeys.
this one's about Bianca.
Yeah, I was camping with my family on this place. It's called Treasure Island, and it's an island in the Wisconsin River. And it was one of my favorite childhood haunts. There were old ruins of a farmhouse there.
Wasn't there actually was there a town there? No, that's
the other
island.
island.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that we
Getting
explored.
my islands confused.
So, so I loved that place, and I explored. I knew every little part of it, from the swamplands to the old silo where you could go down and find these old glass milk containers. It was Becky. It was super, super cool. But one weekend, my family and another family, we all went camping there. And it was just on the edge of this island, this little field that all of us knew how to get to. And I think it was the second, no, it was the first day. And I can feel the sunlight, just a warm summer day coming down. And I had a dog, and his name was Damon. He came with us everywhere. And he walked up to me, and I reached up, laying in the sun, to pet him. And his fur felt strange.
Mm-hmm.
It felt almost kind of waxy and thick. And I opened my eyes, and I wasn't petting Damon. I was petting a fawn, a baby fawn. And I froze and looked up, and then slowly drew the rest of the people's, my family's and our friends' attention to what was here. And this fawn just stood there. She didn't run away. And she became, during that weekend, our constant companion. We named her Bianca, and my dog met her and was fine with her.
Crazy.
Yeah. And they were fine with each other. And she just wanted to be by us. I didn't know at that point how to listen for or be aware of if a mother was around. So I don't know what the background. Yeah, it was amazing. I knew it. Oh, wow, I thought you were going to say
Oh, you're
hair.
gonna imagine. Whoa, hi.
Yeah.
Oh,
And, laughing at Becky's comment. Yeah. And so I remember just watching this animal. That for me became the entire focus of this weekend. And so many things stood out. I remember I'd feel her feet and her hooves were so soft. I didn't realize that their hooves started soft and then got hard later on. And the way she was just very trusting and I'm going to say just loving, her affection to me as a child felt almost supernaturally beautiful and different than the kind of connection or attention you get from a human being or even a domesticated animal. And being really impressed by how she would just eat, she'd graze, and then she'd sleep, and then she'd eat and sleep. And I thought that was so cool. She just kind of just sleeps whenever she wants and eats whenever she wants. It was a glimpse into the wild and a realization that there was something outside of just this giant human drama that we've created that we can take for reality, but often forget that there's tons and tons of other creatures that are living their lives without maybe many of the mental complications that we layer onto life.
mental complications. It's such a delicate way of putting it.
But another thing that really stood out for
they're a
me.
mother.
Yeah, and that's a really good question. And again, at that time, I wasn't aware enough. I didn't know how mothers signaled their babies, and I just wasn't nature aware enough.
We should, when you're done with your story, talk a little bit about what happens
with
abandoned fawns, because they often get separated from their mothers. Probably a lot of you know that, but a lot of people don't know that mothers leave their fawns for hours at a time, and that's actually the safest for them because fawns are born without a scent, and it's safest for them if the mother isn't around. But a lot of people find a fawn just wandering around and they think, oh no, it's, mom probably died, and they take it in to be rehabilitated, but really the mom was just waiting to come back.
And so I wasn't aware at that point of how to read nature that well and how to read deer language. So I don't know, maybe the mama was hanging out the whole time on the periphery and just waiting. Maybe she had met an untimely end.
Never saw a mom.
Never saw a mom, no. And if she was back there huffing or something, at that time I wouldn't have even known that was a deer call. Yeah. So stomping it. So the bigger lesson for me, and this unfolded over years, was thinking back to that instance and thinking about the idea of leave no trace, of hands off of nature. And I've had a fair amount of people that have felt like that I've spoken to, that we should just have our hands off of nature, leave it alone. And I think Bianca, in a way, showed me that there was a bridge, because my personal philosophy, and I'd love to talk about this with all of you, because maybe I can be corrected, or it's obviously this is very nuanced, is to be more hands-on with nature. And that, even questioning in some cases the idea of leave no trace. And I understand leave no trace, really important. Like, do not litter everything and throw stuff around. And I was sneaking through tall grass and I almost stepped on a fawn. Yes.
Oh yeah, they can take a long time to come back.
Yeah, that's why those fawns are taken and separated from their mothers often, because people don't realize that you've got to be super, super patient. And yes, as you're saying here, if we're standing there, the mother often won't come and approach. And so and this feeds into the idea of leave no trace or hands-on, because one of our daughters, Liliana, is very interested in wildlife rehabilitation, wildlife rescue. And we're watching a show right now with a wildlife rescue woman and how she saved so many lives. But it's, she said in the program, some people are just like, leave nature alone. It will figure it out. When we get in there and mess with things, then maybe that animal was supposed to die just to be out of the gene pool. And then we get in there and mess around. So what is our place as human beings in our interaction with nature? And to me, Bianca, the fawn, was the first time an animal came up and said, you can interact in a really intimate way with nature. And it can be a beautiful thing. And I don't know, maybe for both of us, maybe Bianca loved that experience and maybe was able to reunite with her mom. Maybe she was old enough at that point because she was grazing. So maybe she wasn't completely dependent on mother's milk at that point. Or did she just learn to associate humans with goodness and then was shot next year because she didn't know to run away from hunters or be wary of humans? So I think this, for me, kind of leads into more stories, right?
Well, I think that a lot of wildlife rehabilitators would say what they would maybe say what you did was inaccurate in the sense that you began to foster a human wild animal relationship. And as we know, even with a deer, deer are dangerous. Okay. I'm not sure if you've ever seen videos of, these great big, stags attacking hunters and stuff. So the more that you have an animal,
reminds me of a story.
You have a lot of stories. The more that animal is comfortable with humans, we also know that from bears and wolves. And anytime we're feeding the animals, or there's trash and they're gathering, there's less fear, which in some ways, I'm kind of, my philosophy is let's not live in fear. But at the same time, it doesn't seem like there's necessarily a healthy respect for each other, perhaps. And so probably a wildlife rehabilitator would say, don't engage, scare them away, make sure they are not, coming and receiving affection and food and things like that, because you are doing a disservice to that animal in the future. And yet I understand, I'm trying to think if it was Aldo Leopold, who was it Aldo Leopold that was super in his younger years, like, went out hunting, killing birds, doing all of this. But then he became later on, because of his connection and being in nature, became a huge advocate for protecting wildlife and wild places. So there's the flip side of, when we have a magical experience, does that then catapult us into wanting to interact and honor nature a little bit more than we might have if we were just like, yeah, don't touch nature, we're killing it. It's kind of depressing in a way, like we're ruining things, and yet at the same time, there's plenty of human beings who are doing their best to, try to honor nature and all of the creatures in it.
I think that is the crux of the question, of the problem. And please weigh in here if you have thoughts.
Yeah, go ahead, write anytime if you've had experiences or thoughts, or it's a very tangled skein.
Yeah, is that, well, here. Okay. Becky's saying, I'm so glad you're saying that. I think I got certified on leave no trace, and it is in junior rain. We shouldn't mess up nature, but not to walk in the stream or putting it away.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. Okay. And it's wild rabbits in our property.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing at rabbits because we have rabbits around here where they're like, hey, what you doing? Yeah, you might want to step aside because I'm grazing here. So funny.
Yeah, so Becky, that's the key. And so we dislodge a rock, and there's a little ecosystem under there that we've disrupted. And then we can, what do? We can try to put it right back exactly. But when we do that, we're going to squish things, we're killing things by putting stuff back. But if we leave it, what are we doing? And so there's this.
I often think too, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. If a deer stepped into the stream and they moved a rock, would their conscience, I don't know, would they say, oh, I should probably put that rock back? Where do we fit into the natural world as natural animals as well?
Yeah, yes. And I mean, here's a little mini story that now in no way am I advocating that let's just throw our litter out the out the
You are
car
the
window or
opposite of
something.
that. When we lived in Hawaii, almost all the time, whenever we went to the beach, half the time we'd spend picking up trash.
Just pick it up, pick
Just,
up trash, pick up trash.
yeah. So, yeah, we're not like throw everything away, throw it outside. Although I haven't thought about that. So when you're done,
Okay, I wonder if it's the same time because I'm remembering the story when you and I were walking at Sweetwater and we saw a glass bottle down in the
mine's
ditch.
different.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we went down to pick up that glass bottle and because it was trash. And we started to pick it up and we saw that, oh my gosh, there was a nest inside and it was a mouse house.
Yeah.
So to human, trash. To a mouse, this was a great shelter that it was using. And we ended up leaving it there because it was a home for a mouse. And that's where I think this gets nuanced.
Yeah. I wanted to say, in terms of trash, that although we say don't throw your trash everywhere, I wonder what would happen in our world if you had to take all of your trash and put it in a pile right next to your front door. How quickly would we either A, not care and be like, yeah, whatever, I'm gonna just because as human beings we can get used to a lot of, I mean, there's compassion fatigue, there's just eventually not caring because we can get totally conditioned to violence. Or if we had to have our piles of trash outside of our door and look at them all the time, would it maybe encourage us to find other ways to do things so we don't have this monumental pile of trash? Imagine, like, okay, I'm done with my cell phone, like if you're not recycling it, I mean, imagine all of the things if I think of my own pile of trash. So anyway, that was just my little aside of not littering versus, hey, maybe I don't know.
Awareness of it. So Johan saying this slogan that he saw on the package, to leave a small footprint is grand.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, not exactly sure what it seems like a good translation. The idea there being there's something beautiful about just doing less damage. So one of my leave no trace rules is when I overturn logs that hold moisture underneath. Yeah.
Very, very smart.
And that's so we'll go sometimes looking for salamanders with the kids. And to me, I think it's important for kids to go out and have the wonder of looking and trying to find these creatures. But putting them back, especially when we've done something deliberate, to me, that's a little bit different than walking across a stream. If we kick some rocks and things, that's naturally going to happen as we walk across the stream. And, the stream is a very dynamic environment that's shifting and changing all the time, just like any environment.
Yeah, think about when it rains a lot.
Yeah. But to me, when I have an intention, like I'm going to pick up that log and look for a salamander, then definitely I'm just going to set that carefully back.
And it's a habitat that you're actually, in some ways, that moisture, if you leave it overturned, you're completely changing that entire habitat that that is important to some creatures.
And that's usually pretty visible when you turn over a log. You see all kinds of critters in there.
We had a drought last year and we could not find anything.
I know.
Not even
it was dry
not even
log.
centipedes or anything under all the logs. It was really tough. Let's see here.
So Sean, internet don't show their face.
So I'm assuming maybe you're talking about like wildlife shows. I don't know. I know the one that we're watching, they often wear a mask around the animals because they don't want the animals to associate the care with human faces. And so they're trying, for example, in one instance, they were wearing owl masks when they were feeding some owl babies because they just want the animals to try to remain as wild as possible. And so partially they believe that if they don't show the whole of the human face, that the animals won't necessarily make an association. I think that's part of the problem. And there have been stories where a deer has become too fond of humans, and when they try to release it, it comes back and it won't go off into the wild. And then you have this very tame deer. And a lot of times, the show that we're watching, their government was like, you have to euthanize it. We can't have it was a male deer. We can't have a male deer that's not afraid of humans. And so that was really hard for the rehabilitators. And so they really, after that, were like, do not let them be comfortable. We want them to be fearful of us. They didn't do anything intentionally to scare them, but they were very like masks, hands off kind of except for the care that was needed.
Which gets me back to, I'm going to hit some of this stuff. To did I do the right thing as a kid? Should I have scared
Oh
Bianca
yeah,
off?
yeah.
Or in that, as I was saying, it's kind of the crux of the issue here is do we interact with nature and how intimately?
Yeah.
Um, let's see, salamanders and the worms and so many
Yeah.
cool critters under there.
Aw.
It's amazing. It just creates this wonder about nature in the world when you go out and you start exploring what I call a little world like that. If we had to leave all our trash outside our front door, someone would invent packaging that birds
We
would
would start more quickly than we are probably to figure out, and maybe as consumers, we would think about the throwing away part of uh, our consumption.
Yeah, it's so much of it is invisible, and that's why those leave no trace philosophies are important in the sense that it's easy to go to a campsite, throw your wrappers and stuff on the ground and leave because you're not going to see it anymore. And it mimics what our culture kind of teaches us, which you take the trash and you throw it in the trash bag and then it's gone.
Yeah, when I was a kid, I didn't even think. I grew up in a very standard American culture household. Great family. I mean, I feel like I was raised, great. I don't have anything against my parents. However, there was not a knowledge in my childhood of, hey, when you throw the trash away, what happens to it? And there wasn't recycling when I was little. Not in the beginning when I was a little kid. You threw everything in the trash. Actually, that happened in Hawaii too. They had
Oh
very,
yeah.
very little recycling. Sounds odd because they're an island and in the middle of the ocean, but so sometimes you don't even know when you're a kid. You just put the trash in there and it goes like poof, magically disappears
Right,
somehow.
invisibility, which brings up the interesting thing that, in nature, if we were living purely in nature, there's no such thing as trash, right? Like trash is something that we humans have
Yeah.
invented and created when, anyway. So, okay, you were actually, Sean, talking about most people don't want to show their face at all. Yeah. I guess
It depends.
but
Then there's some people who really want to show their face. And maybe they shouldn't, like not because their face is bad, but just because maybe you don't want to see them all the time.
yeah. So Anya, yes, and that's an
Oh my
important
gosh.
thing.
Yeah.
It, a lot of us can recycle, and we just feel super good about putting our glass and our plastics into that recycling bin. But a little bit of research shows that recycling, a lot of stuff that we put in that recycling bin doesn't get recycled, and then the costs, the costs, the environmental costs, and the energy costs to recycle things. So
Well,
really, we need to focus on more on, just consuming less.
right. I mean, recycling in some ways, although we shouldn't necessarily stop, is more like a band-aid than going, hey, what's systemic that's wrong that's leading to this. Um, and I've heard too, it's not that everybody doesn't, that recycling centers don't want to recycle, but sometimes we as consumers don't understand the process. And so we put something in that then blocks up their whole system and routine. And not only is it costly, but then a whole batch of what they were going to recycle has to be thrown out. And so it's just difficult because it feels as though sometimes there's a little bit of a communication barrier about how do we recycle and what do we include and what don't we include. And I just think people really want to do their best. They want to recycle. I know tons of people who just kind of do what I call hopeful recycling. They're like, well, I'm gonna throw this in there because maybe it'll be recycled. And yet that one piece they maybe
can ruin the whole
unknowingly,
batch.
right, like that doesn't go in with those kinds of things, and now that ruins the machine. So there's just so much to learn, and I feel like I wish there were ways we could learn more. But then on the other side, maybe not getting into even needing to recycle so much, or having quote plastics, but not really plastics, but containers, right? Like that the birds could eat, or that are compostable, or there's lots of things that I think we could get creative, and people are trying. So it's not, but that's not the case. So
Sean, thank you for living that way. Love it. Becky, yeah, I mean, wow, you could take this into plants. I mean, this is when we talk about humans interacting with nature, this goes so far. And I'd almost propose that I wonder if there's any place on the planet that isn't right? Humans have touched everything and affected everything. And so, yeah, I remember my overnight winter one. Some people really didn't
Your
like,
video?
yeah, that I used that old piece of rusty barbed wire that I found to create my notch after I've been trying to do it with my teeth or something like that. And
that would be you.
but you know, to one commenter, I pointed out that the very forest I was in was an artifact
Right.
of of humans
Yeah.
and logging and stuff. So the kinds of trees and plants that were available to me
Yes.
were
Very altered.
were very altered by humans. So
Yeah.
the barbed wire, maybe not all that different than the ironwood trees that were dominating in there.
Well, I remember when we lived up north learning about earthworms and how you think earthworms, great for the soil. Well, great for the garden and when you're gardening, but earthworms, I guess, weren't naturally up north where we lived. And you could see places where there hadn't been earthworms and places where there had. And even just something as simple as that, you know, you think, I think from a gardening perspective, oh, get some aeration, was not great for the environment and altered it, But then there's, of course, adaptation.
Yeah.
Anyway, survival theory,
Glass and wood containers. We've been slowly shifting over to, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Those last forever, right?
Well, that's
you can
the
hand
thing.
glass jars down to your children.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think a long time ago, nothing was trash because we wanted to use everything and things, had value because when you emptied a jar, probably you would refill it with something else, a glass jar. And nowadays, what do you do with the plastic wrapping around something? Like if there was a use for it, we would probably use it for that. A shirt becomes a rag, becomes, a kindling for the fire, and there's just so much more use out of it.
So can I make things more complicated?
Yeah.
Yes, litter picker, 100%. We all need to be conscious of that.
Yeah.
So would it be okay for me to go into the woods and to set up a whole camp with a kind of a cheap tent and a bunch of other stuff? And when I was in tarp and
wait, when was this?
I'm just saying, like, if I did this,
would
it be okay? And then when I was done, just to leave it there in the woods. And
are we gonna have this conversation now?
Well, because this is a story.
Okay.
Because I would say that's so irresponsible to leave all that stuff. But here it was. This was probably when I was about 13, about a year older than Bianca. And I had this group, my brother and this awesome guy named White Crow and this girl, Swift Fox. And we were this little kind of nature group. We were starting to get super naturey. And we were wandering in this woods that we always wandered in. And we saw this tent in the woods. And for days, we came back and we watched for hours. Who's there? And we never saw anybody there. We never saw anybody there. And we finally started creeping up and checking this out. And it was this abandoned campsite. And all kinds of stuff, some stuff that we took and reused, other stuff, it was a mystery. What in the world happened there? We have no idea. But we tried to piece whatever we could together as little young detectives. That was a massive amount of litter, essentially, left in the woods. And yet it's left me with one of my most memorable, when I think about it, there's all these feelings and excitement and the chills and the worry and the concern about all these things. It's a chapter in my life, a story in my life that was really, really exciting, informative. And if that person had packed up and taken everything out, then I wouldn't have had that experience. So again, this is where it gets super complicated. And I'm not advocating leaving stuff on purpose. And yet, for instance, when we build a natural shelter, do we dismantle it afterwards or do we leave it? And finding those natural shelters in the woods, and we found them all over the place. It's always super fun, especially if you have kids with you and kids run and they get into them and they, for a moment, are living in the woods in that shelter. And so there again, leave no trace. Do we dismantle our shelters? Yeah, it was creepy, Becky. I mean, I can feel it viscerally, all these emotions that were wrapped around that singular experience.
You know,
Thank you, Sean.
I like your comment, Sean. I try, you know, I don't love cities a ton, and yet cities provide some things that I think are valuable,
Trash
especially
industry.
to the human experience. And a lot of times, for greedy purposes, I'm grateful a lot of people want to live in this city. So I'm like, more country for me. There, I was totally honest. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We talked a little about cities last time.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think it almost comes down to just individual experiences that we have, and it shows. I mean, I'm going to get a little metaphysical here, but I don't think there is a right or wrong answer. It's different for each person, it's different for each experience, and each of us might have experienced that abandoned campsite differently. And for you, it was this thing that stuck with you forever. And for somebody else, it might have been, oh, the world is coming to, you know, let's pick this up. This is horrible. And there's all
Trish,
these,
you're here.
hi Trish. There's all these, and someone else, morale or val.
Oh.
There's all these different ways that we can interpret what we encounter. And sometimes we can even experience conflicting feelings about a singular experience. You know, at the same time, we can be both repulsed and curious, both this is terrible and wow, this is kind of cool. And I don't know that that's wrong. You know, like I don't necessarily, from my personal point of view, think there's only one right answer and it should always be followed all the time. So
Yeah. So survival theory, we have some all these valleys around where we live, and some people still do, but in the old days, people would throw trash at the top of those.
my grandma did
valleys.
that.
Yeah.
It was so weird. She'd be like, go throw the trash away. And like walk to the edge of the hill and just dump it over.
And you know, I look at that and horrible in so many ways, and yet we've gone rooting around in there too, looking for treasures. And so those old things, sometimes you find amazing things. So blurry line.
Yeah. Oh, hi, Drew.
I found an abandoned campsite in the state park. Okay. So I wanted to assume maybe they had kids and had to bail. Yeah. What is, and those leave mysteries and stories.
Yeah, and if it's a nice tent, they leave nice tents.
I
I was trying to be useful. We're talking about reusing and recycling, and you know, I don't know if the person doesn't come back for a while. I guess.
Oh, yes. Nice.
Yeah, yeah. There's all different
Sometimes,
viewpoints.
yes. That's a good point, Trish. Because
yeah.
What are the circumstances there?
Well, I mean, you could, if you did have kids, I mean, what if one of them gets horribly sick, you know, and you're like, we need to go into the ER because, you know, fever of 104 and what do we do? We gotta go, you know, we'll come back later maybe, but then you don't. So I think we've all done things like that where we've had an intention and we can't follow through with it for one reason or another.
Yeah. The definition we give it.
Yeah.
Becky's saying. Yeah. And that's,
yeah.
That I think it's important to remember with so many things, because our culture loves to see things in black and white and just there's a this is how it should be and this is how it shouldn't be. But what if a bear ate them? But no, I was just thinking, you know, you could come across this bunch of litter and stuff in a camp, and it could be that they got scared off by a bear and they did not mean anything. And I could sit there going, these terrible people that left all this stuff.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. I have no problem with natural shelters. One problem with abandoned tents equipment is the police waste use. Yes. Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
And as kids, we never reported that. We just explored it because, again, I think we're thinking like kids. And
yeah.
Should we move to a? Okay.
So this is all super awesome, and feel free to keep commenting on it, and we'll go back and forth on this. But we're going to share another story.
Okay.
Which again comes down to just perception and learning about things and never knowing, you know, how much you should interact. So we'll take these comments first here.
Okay.
Let's see here. So
you'd be surprised how many thousands of tents left behind on purpose. Yeah. People do just leave stuff. So attention looks off frame coming after you're gone. Yes. Yeah.
You know, though, if you continue to be open-minded though, you'll touch people. You'll be an example for others, and they'll go, hey, wow, that person responded totally differently from what I thought. In fact, we were just having a conversation with our girls this morning. It takes at least two people to make a disagreement. And what if, I was asking Mirabelle, hey, when you're mad, if I get mad back at you, how do you feel? If I say, you need to fix your behavior, you're being angry right now, how do you feel when you're in the midst of being mad? And I said, what if your dad or I just listens to you? We say, hey, go ahead and have your feelings. We validate you. She's like, yeah, that's totally different. So I'm just saying, Sean, keep up with your open-mindedness, and more people will become open-minded just by seeing your example. So
yeah, you're always mirroring that in the YouTube comments. So that's beautiful.
The idea that a person should have an opinion about everything. Oh, amen. I want to be like, I give myself permission not to have an opinion on this right now, or like to change my mind.
Yeah.
It just seems like we don't allow ourselves and other people to change. If you're friends with someone and then suddenly they're like, oh, I think this, and you're like, but that's not how you are. You're acting totally out of character.
Yeah.
It's like we go through phases. We get more information and such. So
we've had that, and comments on some of our videos, especially the ones I've done that are on some of the more kind of polarizing subjects. And I always tend to, of course, be nuanced because that's just the way I see the world. And yeah, I've had people like, you must take a stand and a side. You cannot sit on a fence. And it's hard for me to take a stand and a side when I can see that situations are different. People are different. There's so much that goes into. Okay.
Respect. Yeah. So
it's not my opinion. It's probably the wrong opinion. Yes, we live like that, right? I mean, I try to wonder sometimes when someone is so sure that they're right. Wow, how are you sure that you figured it out when there's so many people trying to figure out, and you're sure that you've got it right, and this person's got it, and this person. So I tend to think of myself as just ignorant because, I mean, what would it take for me to dig deep enough into something to really actually know everything about it and to remove all nuance? I'd probably have to spend my whole life on a single subject.
Yeah, there's just too much involved and too many different experiences that are behind something. So.
Oh gosh, me and my little brother had some.
Hey, that's character.
I think I was just the mean one. I was not.
You were mean. I was not yeah, we have stories, but we won't tell that. You should tell this next story here, which has a little bit to do with, I think, like, thinking you know something when maybe you don't.
Yeah. And so, I've always kind of felt like it's important for people to get out.
That's great. Survival theory. Yeah.
Yes. That is, to me, honestly, that's the biggest wisdom, is knowing our ignorance. Now, I just called myself the biggest wise person because I call myself ignorant.
Oh, you are so wise.
But really, there's so much to that. And that also keeps our mind curious and learning and looking for new evidence and exploring the world. Because when I lock down and I say, I know everything about something, then I cease learning because I'm not willing to take in any new information. So I think that's really, really important. Yes, Sean, definitely. So this has to do with trapping. And people might have strong feelings about trapping. And I've always felt like it's important to get out into the woods. And, if someone's teaching their kid to hunt, even like I'm not into, for instance, predator hunting or things. I think to me, that's not a thing, but it's still, I can see that they're teaching people to get out and interact with nature. Maybe not in the exact ways that I would propose, but I'm not going to cut it down. Now, trapping, though, has always been tough for me, especially these little leg hole traps. And apologies if anybody out there is an avid trapper, and I know some people do it responsibly. But when I was a kid, there was a very irresponsible trapper back in that same woods where we found the tent. And we would find animals that had been sitting there for weeks, obviously. And the person had never come and opened up the trap or taken the animal. And so I never knew who this person was, but I passionately dislike them. And one day, you and I were walking in the woods, and here we came upon a trap with an animal in it.
Yeah, it was sad. It was just caught by its like last two little fingers, and you could see it, it was in the wintertime. Was it the wintertime?
Yeah.
Am I getting mixed up?
Gosh, I can't remember. I just remember the
right. Yeah,
half moon.
There was this like as it was trying to get away. There was
grab the
this,
water.
yeah, there was this kind of groove of a half circle dug into the snow or the dirt. And I can't remember exactly what time of year it was. And yeah, and it was a possum, and it was still alive, and you know, and it didn't look too bad.
It was dehydrated, but it was
Yeah.
you know, and been just trying to get out by those two things. So
we decided we're going to be animal rescuers.
Yep. So this is illegal, but we did it anyway.
Yeah.
And
don't tell anybody. I don't think we can go to be punished anymore, can we?
I don't think so. I think there's a statute.
Like however many years. This was years ago. Yeah. So you released the trap, and we took this possum.
It was out of it.
We started getting worried because first it was kind of moving around, and then we came up, and it just kind of collapsed, and it was like, oh my gosh, this thing is dying on us. We have to go. And then it started drooling, and we were like, oh man. And so we thought we need to get away from here as soon as possible, as fast and far away. And Kenton's dad lived on the other side of town from where we were. He lives by the Wisconsin River, by some backwaters, perfect territory for possums. And so we said, let's go there. Kenton goes, okay, I'll drive, because he could drive like a maniac. He did when he was younger. He doesn't now, because I'm
very safe now.
But anyway, we were like, we need speed here. And so I held on to the possum on
just
my
in
lap.
your lap, just holding the possum.
I'm just holding it, and it's like dying, you know? And so I'm like, Kenton, we have to go. I need to be released. I didn't want it to like die in my lap, you know. I wanted it to be like die in nature. So anyway.
So we got over there, got into the yard, and we set it down and just put some water by it and backed up just to watch and observe for a while. And of course, if you know anything about possums, you might know what happens next.
Yeah, you'll be laughing at us.
Because
we go into the house, and we're watching from the window. We're like, what's going on? And slowly it gets up. And it gets up. It looks around. We're like, oh, thank goodness, you know. And so we said we should go out there, you know, and just look it over, make sure everything's okay, kind of see how it is. And what happens?
So we go out there. You're so good at this face. Do you want to do it?
I don't know if I can do it anymore, really. But we approach the possum, and it looks at us, and then it's like, yeah. And literally, it falls perfectly sideways, and it does the whole like open mouth, drooling, like I'm dead. And of course, again. We look at each other like, oh, possum's playing dead, duh. You know, oh, we were so worried. And so we realized.
I know. Why didn't we think of it?
I know. I mean, we're so silly. But at any rate, we were concerned, right?
So this guy was fine, except for two broken skulls.
It was so cool, because even like the next time we went out tracking in the winter, we would know it was our possum, because he'd have the funny little possum tracks. But then his little fingers would be broken even more. And so we knew that he was out there, and he was doing just fine. And so we were like, we got this, you know, we can deal with any possum that comes our way.
So before we tell this next part of this story, I want to show you a possum skull that we found in the woods. So you realize what would have happened maybe if Rebecca had that possum wake up in her lap. Many people don't know this about possums, but check out the teeth on this guy.
Show it from the front too.
Okay. These guys have teeth. And this was a couple of years later.
Yeah, we were at my mom's house, and you know, we were there just visiting and helping her out with some things. And I don't remember who it was. One of my siblings came in from the garage. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, there's a possum trapped out in the garage, and he got into oh yeah. And he's gotten into the fishing gear. And so this possum had gotten into where we're keeping our our fishing lines, and
You had a fishing net, I think. Was he kind of in the
he
net?
was
Or
in.
in...
He had gotten a hook from
Oh,
one of the
yeah.
fishing poles, but yes, he was also kind of in a net, and he was obviously scrambling around trying to get out, and had impaled himself on a hook. Because when we're done fishing, we
Yes,
just take
you
our
are.
little hook and hook it into one of the little spots in the, so all our fishing poles had little hooks on them, not dangling free, but he had managed to get one in him. And so we were like, oh, guys, no problem. Let the professionals handle this.
We got this.
If you watch, we're just gonna walk right up.
Oh, watch and
he's
learn.
He's gonna die, and then we'll just release him.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We walk up and go to scare them and kill them so that we can, they're unconscious. They can't even help that when it happens. And you can, I mean, don't do this at home, but you can pick them up. We could remove everything, would have gone smoothly. But instead,
oh, he was like,
holy cow, he was vicious.
He didn't stop the whole time.
He was not falling asleep.
Defending himself.
He was
had
gonna
to
kill
get
us.
a leather glove, and it was like this huge production. And then finally we got him free, and you were holding, I remember you were like holding him like by the tail, and he was like,
So we got the fish hook out and released him, but he did not fall asleep.
No, not once, not even when you were holding him. And afterwards we looked at each other and we realized, wow, we're so dumb.
These guys, right? Nature doesn't have rules.
It's not black and white for nature.
It's not.
Oh my
God. That's something we've had to impress on, people, our students at ReWild U and stuff. There's, here's how black bears up north, here's how they behave 95% of the time.
Yeah.
But nature doesn't always play by those rules.
Yeah.
And so we had an instance where one of our students we told them exactly how a bear was going to do this, was bluff charged, and the bear ran towards him like it was going to kill him, and then just veered off and ran away. And that's usually what happens. But we had one of our assistant teachers, he had a bear with a mama cub that rushed him, kept probably
then she kept
over 10 times.
Right. So he was out there
with
his partner and his little girl, who was like a year old, and they had gone out to have this nice day in nature. And he was like, okay, we're just going to go quietly. She tailed him all the way till they got back to their car.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how far it was. And he was like, is that normal? I'm like, well,
she was not really
not normal, but in general, no.
So yes, the cat in the box from National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Exactly.
It's just craziness.
You should live by the mountains. Oh, Sean, sometimes I wish we could just pick you up and put you in some beautiful natural place for your home, because I think you're in the city, right? Yeah.
New York, I think.
Possums freak you because
they're ancient. They're really old.
That's what I thought.
Oh,
but then someone actually, there's recent research, I think genetic research, that is suggesting that they are not.
I don't know anything.
When we say ancient, like they've had the same form for a long time. But I don't know if that's, who knows what people.
It just goes to show.
They seem ancient.
Stuff changes. Yeah.
Right? They seem like they've been here forever. They seem like the most unlikely creatures. This giant rat that just has a top speed of probably, I don't know. They're not
very
fast.
Slow. Oh my gosh.
And how does it make it? But that their ability to play dead, to fall asleep, and their teeth, if they want to use them.
Wow.
They're very successful animals.
I was a lucky person, I guess.
Yeah. Could you imagine if that had woken up in your lap? Whoa.
I do not know what would have happened then. And it didn't. So all's well that ends well. But I think it just kind of goes to show that, we got involved with nature there, and it was two similar things, but very different. And, part of me asked the question, how will we learn if we aren't involved somehow? I mean, if we want to help, I think about this kind of parallels in a way medical science and the history that's had.
Hey,
and
Jay.
there were certain things that we've done in the course of history, medically, in the name of science, that probably were not super great.
We're doing great.
Yet now, those things that we've learned, maybe from not such great things, save lots of lives. And, it's like, does the end justify the means? And, all those kinds of questions where I don't know if again, is there a real truth? Is there a truth with a capital T about all of this? So,
Jake, thanks for always sharing these. I notice every one we've made, you've shared. Really, really appreciate
yeah, thank
that.
you so much.
So, okay. So, probably not an answer. Okay. Good to see you. Thanks for coming, Becky. Nice. I'm glad you have people that can take you places. Okay. I guess predators aren't interested in animals that appear to be already dead. Yeah.
And scavengers on the vampire tea. Super true.
I couldn't believe it when we found that skull. I just always thought it must just be playing dead, which is their deal and their protection.
Right.
Those canines are bigger than.
They're really big.
I mean, it's way bigger than raccoons or I don't
It's
know
like a
anything
cat
that
on
has
steroids, kind of.
Yeah, it looks like the
Well,
old.
shrews have a very scary teeth
Oh,
for their
man.
skulls, but they're not as dangerous to us, I guess.
Yeah, that's a skull we should show you sometime. That thing is.
Oh yeah, we could just spend a whole thing going through
That
skulls.
is scary. Yeah, we have a little collection from. There used to be this pine forest
Yeah.
that we go out into, and there'd be tons of skulls in there. First of all, it seemed like animals just came there to die, but also a lot of the predatory birds would leave their, the prey, and so we found super cool skulls there.
Well, gosh, do you have another story you want to share?
Well, on this vein, are we going to stay on this?
I don't know.
This vein, I think.
It
feels like we're all seeing that it's nuanced.
You should just tell a fun story. Can you tell the one about Maeve?
Okay. This is kind of human and nature interaction too.
I don't know.
Okay.
I just think it's an entertaining story.
Okay. We lived for a number of years at this farm. It's a big extended family. So grandparents, multi-generational family community, but very good friends of ours. And we lived there, and we ran ReWild U there for a while. And they were farmers too. And I said it was a farm. And so they had one of their animals.
You don't know much means you're very wise.
That's true. One of their animals was Maeve. And Maeve was a pig, and she was the pig that made the breeding pig. I worded wrong. I meant on the great grand scale of things. Oh, it's all God. Yes. There's no wrong answer. All brings up higher understanding.
Oh, we thought you had to go. And I had my glasses on, so I misread that you said it's all good. But
zooming out. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we can take a step back and take a broader viewpoint, because usually we're locked into our human viewpoint, and that human viewpoint is invariably biased by our life experiences and our upbringing and all sorts of things. And as survival theory said, if we can overcome a lot of that by recognizing how much we don't know, recognizing that any situation we see, we are missing probably 80 to 90% of the background information of what made that situation unfold. But that's hard for we humans, I think, to do, because often our ego rides on the feeling of being correct and right.
Well, I also think that it's hard for us to remember that when something has happened, we can learn from it, even if it's a thing that happened that we don't like. And maybe especially if it's something that we don't like, or it's something that we have caused, or we chose an action and then we realized, oh, I didn't like that action. All the things that happen they're like a school for us to learn from. And that's just a helpful view for me personally, so that I don't get too seriously attached to thinking that there is a right or a wrong. So I'm glad that you brought that up.
So Maeve, they had this pig. It was the breeding pig. So then her babies they would eat. And she weighed in at about 275 pounds.
Yeah.
And we were hanging out at home one day, and we get this call. And I don't know why. I mean, sometimes
They
people
just-
think I'm a superhero or something.
Well, you've chased turkeys and wrangled baby cows and all sorts of stuff.
So we get this call, and they're cutting. Maeve got out of the fence. She's loose, and she's off in the woods, and we don't know what to do.
They loved this pig. She was relatively new, and they had decided they wanted to put her and her mate outside so that they could be in the grass. And so they had put up an electric fence that ran from the barn and then out into this big kind of beautiful grassy field area so they could run around and they could forage and things. And Maeve was not used to electric fencing, and as happens with many animals that are not used to it, she hit the electric fence and then she just kept going. And she tore the whole fence down. And luckily they got her mate back, but she ran off up into the woods.
Now, you may not know, when a domestic pig gets out into the wild, they very quickly revert into a wild form. And it's kind of bizarro. I mean, they'll start to grow tusks and get
Thicker hair.
Yeah, and this happens fairly quickly. And
Although not within a matter of hours.
no. but they revert to a feral status very successfully. So for me, there's always, if a domestic animal gets out, there's kind of this thought of, well, maybe they broke free and they're free.
Go live the good life.
That's weighed against in Wisconsin, the feral pigs it's always open season.
Mm-hmm.
If any farmer saw her, she probably would have been shot.
And they loved her, and they were so beside themselves with like, oh, she's going to get hurt, or we'll never find her, or she'll go on the road and she'll be hit by a car. And they were just kind of beside themselves with worry. So,
yes, Javelina. So I grabbed a climbing rope and thinking maybe I'll fashion some kind of lasso or something, and just ran off to go try to find Maeve.
I stayed back because the girls were very little, and I was like, I cannot do this right now, but I'll be here. I'll have the phone.
And this is clearly an impossible task. Pigs are fast. They're very aware. They are, I mean, she's huge. She's 275 pounds. I'm 150 pounds. And she is out in the vast woods. So this is impossible. But
yeah, and they had like 250 acres of forest and fields.
But yeah, it would be cool. We're pigs. I hear you, Sean. So I went out and I picked up her tracks and started following her. And over the next couple hours, it started to get really windy, and trying to track her and losing her tracks and regaining the tracks. Christina.
Hi, Christina.
Oh, for your piggy and goats. Okay. So yeah, this is a piggy story.
Yeah.
What do you do if your pig gets loose? And so I was searching in the woods. I think I finally got to a road, and I saw one of the other the community members, and she said that she had a feeling that the pig might be up here. So I started wandering up there, just following her intuition. She was a very intuitive person. And I was going back through the woods. It was getting windier and windier. And then I saw her. There she was. Oh my gosh, there's Maeve. And I'm standing there with my climbing rope and going, what do I do now? And so there was this little path over here that seemed like a good route. I thought, I'm going to set up a little trap, right? If you know what a snare is, so a loop that she would run through, and I'll pull it at the right time, as if this is going to happen. So I set it up in the trail, and I'm holding the end, and I start kind of wandering around the edge, hoping that I can get her to go down that trail. You know what happens? She goes down that trail. She sees me. She starts trotting down that trail. Oh my God, it's working. And she gets right in there so that she's one leg, the front legs are on this side, the back legs are on that, and I pull it tight. And
so you're around her middle, essentially.
Around her middle. And she feels that, and she takes off. And her 275 pounds of torque and acceleration, lift my little 150 pounds of kitten into the air, and I'm flying through the air and then dragging through the ground. And from previous experience and the other things that are very similar, oddly, I have this weird ability to see a tree coming and to roll to the side of the tree and then kind of wrap the thing, and it worked, right?
Yeah.
And suddenly she comes to a halt. And yes, so important, Sean. Thank you. She comes to a halt. And that's when I heard, I don't know, Christina, have you ever heard your pig in distress? She starts screaming, and it's like orcs from Middle Earth. It is the most terrifying, horrifying sound I've ever heard. And I'm trying to calm her down and say, it's okay. We just want to get you home. We don't want you to get shot out here. And we're just trying to help you. And she's just caught, by her back legs and her middle. So it was a really good, solid catch. She wasn't going anywhere, but she was screaming. And the screaming brought the rest of the people down through the woods. What happened after then?
Oh, I can tell you because I was on the phone. It was a Sunday and no veterinary clinics were open, and
she was not going to let us close. At this point, she was scared.
She was very feisty. And so I'm talking with the
Understandably scared.
Yeah, I'm talking with the different family members from the farm who were like in different locations, and so they're like, "Oh, we have her. Oh, she sounds terrible. I can't even be here." They're like so worried about her.
Everybody's crying.
I know, because they love this pig. And so I'm meanwhile calling every veterinary clinic I can. I'm like, "Look, we have a loose pig. She's now caught, but she ended up in the woods at the top of this cliff that then drops down to the road." And everyone's like, "How do we get her to the farm? We need to sedate her." So finally get a hold of someone who says, I have an emergency vet on hand. As soon as they're done with the other emergency that they're at, I'll send her your way. You're going to love her. She's great. And so, just be prepared, but you might have to wait. So
we sat there for a long time, just trying to talk to her, calm her down. But she was not, again, she was understandably scared.
Yeah.
And was not letting any of us anywhere close. And I mean, she looked like she could.
Wow, she was pretty strong.
Pigs
are very strong.
She's powerful.
So the vet arrives in her truck and comes out. And how did you describe her to me?
She comes up to the woods. She's probably 98 pounds. She's super small,
tall,
petite.
and
she has
slender.
all this makeup on. She's super kind of just cute, pretty. And you're thinking, I think we need somebody who's got a bunch of tattoos or something. And
Yeah.
She was so like,
she was on it.
All the rest of us were scared to actually go up to her, and she just came up from behind and gave the first injection.
Yeah, she was like, "Okay, how much does she weigh?" And she calculated out, and
she was so smooth and so like had this loving voice for Maeve and just super calm. So, but Maeve had adrenaline, and so it took. Yes,
all the way home. Well, really, literally, actually.
Yeah. So
how many
Maeve would not go to sleep.
Did they have to?
She had to do way more than she thought because Maeve was adrenaline up and was not going anywhere. Meanwhile, one of our guys, another guy, he was helping me with the school, and real woodsy guy, and he was making up a makeshift.
Like a travois.
Swing.
Two poles with, and then they didn't have anything because everyone was out there, so everybody was taking off their jackets
to make
this kind of sling. And so then
finally she gets Maeve to fall asleep, and we lay her down into the thing, and then Maeve wakes up and starts and so one more injection, and then we struggled down that. Oh my gosh, she was so heavy, and we got her into the truck. And it was only probably, going up around the corner and then back down into the farm. And we're coming towards there, and Maeve starts to wake up again.
Literally, it was just like maybe 5 minutes would take you to get from the road to back to the barn.
She was like, I'm not going to be sedated.
And she was already waking up.
But just enough time for us to get her into there, back with her maid, and close the gate. And then boom, she was back up on her feet like she was.
Animals are so incredible.
She was incredible. So, but again, there's always that part of me that's, should she have been left wild?
Yeah.
And that's where.
That's where you get,
I
I'm
know.
sorry, I'm going to be the devil's advocate. That's where
Okay.
you get a boa constrictor problem. Is it the boa constrictors or is it pythons? I get confused.
That
Problem
is
in Florida.
Burmese
Burmese
python.
pythons. Yeah, because people are deciding they don't want their pet snake anymore and they're releasing it into the wild. And now all of these snakes are breeding with each other and eating the native bird population. I'm sorry, I think that's not necessarily the best case.
Yeah. So I think I feel right about
Rescuing
catching her, rescuing her.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's again where all this stuff is nuanced to me. And I look back and I wonder how much that's just part of human nature. I will never Florida for that reason.
Oh.
Are you not into snakes, Becky?
We used to have a lot of snakes and we would go to
we were snake educators.
Yeah, we would
had
go
pet
to
snakes.
elementary schools and we would go to homeschool groups and we'd go to nature preserves and we'd bring our snakes and we'd teach people about snakes.
A lot of people, it'd be the first time they touched a snake when they were with us. And people would be crying and just
It was
touch
very
the tail.
special.
But it was, I think, life-changing for a lot of people because they saw that. So disclosure, I mean, for me, I wanted to be a herpetologist when I was a kid. I skipped a lot of classes in school and would go to the library at the school and read books on snakes. So they're kind of my favorite animals, but I'm fine looking at them, but no snakes in my bubble.
Well, and partially, I mean, that's totally understandable. It's difficult because in a lot of places there are venomous snakes. And if you aren't educated about snakes and which ones are venomous and how to tell and how to deal with a snake or move a snake, it's again, it's like recycling. If you don't know, you can accidentally make a mistake and put the wrong thing in recycling. It's the same with snakes. If you don't know, you don't want to make a mistake. So a miss snake. Anyway.
So Christina's saying that they have a lot of those.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They were all over Hawaii too.
Yeah. So I know a lot of places in the South, there's a lot of them.
Oh, but their babies are so cute. Their little baby pigs, wild pigs are so cute. Oh. Lots of wild goats and wild sheep.
Oh yeah, lots of wild goats.
Yeah.
And they just became very successful. But Hawaii is a case study, and a lot of the original animals that were on the island are gone or having a really tough time because of things that we've brought in. What did I say is part of human nature? Do you remember what I said?
Oh gosh, no, I remember when you said that, but now I can't remember it. Too bad we can't just rewind.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I can't remember what I said. I don't think a pig would last long in the wild in the USA. Yeah. So the I know in a lot of places, there's a couple in southern Wisconsin, they kind of move up and then get pushed back. And there's no, almost all hunting in Wisconsin, there's strict seasons, but the wild pigs, they say anytime. And so, yeah, I don't think she would have lasted long. And
especially with a lot of the roads and things that she would have ended up, going across there.
But then we humans, we often look when we feel unsure about an action that we've taken, we will try to find things to justify it. And so, that's a way that I try to justify that when there's a part of me that's just, she should have been able to just go wild and free. If she was free in the wild for even 2 days, that would have been better than, a lifetime being kept in a fence. So I don't.
Becky has a good point because she wasn't originally wild. And I think that's true in a lot of cases, that a lot of animals that are domesticated or were bred in captivity, that's their whole history. They don't necessarily even know how to, and that's one of the things wildlife rehabilitators have to do. If they get young injured animals in and rehabilitate them, they have to help them understand how to be a wild animal, because and a lot is instinct, so they know a lot, but in some cases, they don't know. And so I think that's a good point.
Wow, so you see them trail running.
Yeah, wow. I imagine they probably do.
Wish we could all be free.
Yeah.
So yeah, because it's not just it's not just other animals, it's human animals too, right? We've created this culture that locks us down and captures us in so many ways. We love in the United States to say that we have freedom, but if we look, there are so many of these mental structures, right, that we've created around ourselves. Remember coming back from the teaching drum after 3 months in the wild and just looking at the human situation, the human culture we've created, and thinking it was literally insane because there's so much complication that we've created that and and we can say maybe there's reasons for it, but again, complicated, nuanced situation.
Actually, I think it's a great question that we should all ask ourselves. What do you picture as freedom? Like, what's a free human look like in your world? What does that mean? What the word freedom is such a huge word, and can be taken on so many levels. So, it would be a fun topic of conversation at some point. What's a free human? Because there's conditioning from our culture. I mean, there's so much that goes into who we are. I think it would be really fun to get different people's ideas on that.
Do you read Onions?
No, I have not yet. Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah.
Incidentally, Sean, I used to be horrified, terrified of sharks. I could not watch movies with them or see pictures of them or go into aquariums if there was a shark. But actually, I had a cousin for a while, just via kind of my uncle's second marriage, and he loved sharks. And his entire room was sharks. And we were the same age. And so when we'd visit, if I wanted to go in his room and hang out, there were shark posters everywhere. And he was like, sharks are fascinating animals and they're completely misunderstood. And he started to educate me about the way that they work in the ecosystem and how important they are for the health of the ocean and all these other things. And even though I still have some trepidation about sharks, I have a great respect for them too. So a lot of times, just learning about how valuable and amazing an animal is, I think it's perfectly normal to be afraid of things. That's very, very normal. It's not as normal for us to go and ask questions about what we're afraid of, but I think that's part of the exposure that gives us a sense of, hey, well, because fear leads to kind of a hatred or a pushing away, and a vilifying of something. And when you at least respect something, you can, you have a different relationship that's available.
Yes. And I have to say that you came so far that when we lived in Hawaii, I found a shelf down where there was a shark under a shelf, and it was just a little too deep for you.
It was too far for me to dive.
You really tried.
I did. I tried several times. I tried to have you drag me down there, but I did not make it all the way down. But I tried. I would have gone to see another one. I wanted to see what it felt like to be in the water with a shark and see how I felt. Because there's so many people out there who love sharks and care for them, and they're not injured by them. And there's so much to that topic too. Everything. Let me see here.
Let's see. So Anya,
pigs. That is a great thing. Little picker. They do eat a ton of things, and a lot of people keep them agriculturally because they're super good for digging up the soil and aerating the soil and kind of the health of that if you're going agriculturally. So
there was amazing book, The Good Pig. I don't know if any of you.
Oh yeah, by Cy Montgomery.
Yeah, she's one of our favorite authors. When I wrote Chasing Turkeys, I sent her that manuscript, and she read our book and ended up endorsing our book. This author that we love and respect so much. She is a hands-on in nature.
She's amazing.
Person, and she'll go and she wants to become the animals almost.
Yeah, The Soul of an Octopus is another one she wrote. It's so fascinating and such a different viewpoint. She does really try to give you an idea of what that animal might be experiencing in their Umwelt, in their experience of the world and how they experience it. And it's just such a great Cy Montgomery. Check her out. She's got tons of books. Amazing, interesting naturalist. Yeah. So such an animal lover. Yeah.
Just wanted to say, Anya, that the people around us can hold us back, and often that's because I think of fear. There's so many things we get into our comfortable places in life, and then it's really hard to see outside of those places. As parents, that's a really easy way to get caught in that, and to see something your children are doing and say no because we don't understand it. So we need to, I think, as humans, when we're trying to understand other humans, take that time to try to really understand other viewpoints. Oh, okay.
I love the thought that we were preyed upon by giant spiders, but I mean, I think it's the venomous creatures and the creatures that are farther from us that we don't understand. Because you notice people aren't listing that they're afraid of fast food here, which is probably a bigger killer in some ways, having heart disease.
More dangerous than.
Right. Yeah. Or, honeybees. They're pretty dangerous for a certain segment of the population, but a lot of times it's things that are less familiar to us that we're afraid of. I also really liked humans should not waste vibes on worry, Becky. I've been trying to talk to the girls about that lately, and myself. What does worry? If there's concern and you can act on it, you can. We action movement. I feel like fixes a lot of things. So when we feel emotionally in a certain place that's difficult for us, to take an action forward that feels purposeful helps us draw away from that. And if you're just left in worry and you're just left feeding this kind of mental loop, you're not doing much but just raising the stress in your system, which then isn't really going to help you respond if you need to. So I agree with that point quite a bit.
Yeah, clowns.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all the things. There's so many things. Fear.
We should just do a whole thing on fear sometime. It's very interesting. I mean, fear is like our mind, it comes down to our minds being so intense and so sometimes unmanaged by us individually and as a culture. And it's something I wish that we could take our younger people, train ourselves first, and then take our younger people to understand that we're always training our minds, we're always training our brains, and we could choose to train it into whatever perceptions that we want with enough, openness and enough guidance and enough focus. Easier said than done.
Little Picker has given me a vision of a fast food hamburger with great big fangs in it.
Right, but it's the silent killers that are the most scary of all, though. You think you never even saw it coming.
Yeah, it's this weird way. And this points to, I think, how we have changed what dangers are in our culture, because we're not physically attacked by those, but in some way, in a way you could look and you could see, well, some people are attacked in the sense that they're seduced in, they're drawn in by, these foods are made to just hit our pleasure centers and get us feeling like we want more. And so they don't attack us, but they can draw us in and sometimes get us doing things that I'd hear that a lot from students at ReWild U, feeling like, oh, I want to get over my fast food habit, but just even thinking about it, my mouth starts watering and I just want it.
Yeah.
And so there's this different kind of danger, which I think breeds the fear and the stress that we have in this culture, because those dangers just sit there, right? The bee's mine, yes, or the bear in the woods. You're walking through the woods and you see the bear and you have an adrenaline response, you react to it, and then the bear's gone. And ideally, you don't become afraid of the woods. That maybe happens for some people because that's kind of our training. But you let that go, you tell everybody about it. It was an amazing experience, but it doesn't sit there and continually worry you like some of the things in our culture.
Yeah, we don't say that we're afraid of driving in cars usually. Though I think if we looked, we should be a little bit more scared about that. Yeah, I don't know.
Good point, my Trish.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, fear definitely has its purposes, but it's so weird because nowadays, it seems like if we would go way back, and this is, of course, my kind of, what's the word I'm looking for, sort of niceified version of tribal peoples, and we're just living in the woods. In general, probably something happens and we can respond, and then things settle down and it's back to kind of normal. And something happens and we respond. But nowadays, our minds and our culture, there's constant things to worry about all of the time. It's like we're being buried under a pile of straw, like thousands of pieces of straw, versus being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger.
Yeah.
So it is very difficult then to disengage the fear, because first of all, we misinterpret what is to be feared. And secondarily, we don't always just take immediate action to pause that fear. Like, how do you take immediate action on the stressors that your brain is giving you all the time?
Yeah, I mean, if I let it, it will become just all the stuff of our culture will become kind of an anxiety inside of me, in the sense that there's so many things that we could sit here and talk that we could worry about. And my mind has always had a tendency to do that. So it's taken a lot of mind training to get myself where I don't let my mind go down those roads that I know lead me into those fear places.
I think Anya's point is really good too. When you can let the feelings come in and experience them, a lot of times it's the pushing away of the experiencing of the emotion. I don't want to have this. Why do I feel like this? This is happening again. I'm a horrible person, whatever. If we can just feel it, whatever, and express it.
Yeah. I mean, Trish put the negative emotions in quotes, and that's really important. I call them resistance-based emotions. And those are those emotions that you feel like you don't want to have, so you push against them. And I think that's what gives them their power. And when you just feel them, then
I'm sorry. I'm reading ahead here. But anyway, see, it's winter for us, and it's maybe 10 degrees Fahrenheit.
But here's the thing: it was super cold last night, so we had all the wood stoves
and
going.
The sun is shining in now, so our house is probably about 66 degrees. So yeah. Plus Kenton likes the cold, but when we lived in Hawaii, we got really adapted, and it was weird because we would get cold when it was 60, whereas when you live in the north here, 60s are really super warm.
Yeah.
So it's such a strange the adaptation and how it switches you around.
And we've been in the negatives Fahrenheit for a week or so, 2 weeks. So it's up in the teens Fahrenheit right now, just above zero. Teens Fahrenheit. I can't translate that, unfortunately, to Celsius, but so it feels really warm to us outside.
There's some. I'm just looking at survival theory. A golden hawk. Wow.
Okay, I'm trying to read in order here. So
anyway.
You're very scared, anxious.
That's tough. I gotta say, I'm a fearful parent in a lot of ways, because you just can't prepare somebody for everything. So you have to prepare them for how to be prepared. It's that kind of sharing of how to understand what should be taken as serious and should be addressed, and what doesn't need to be addressed at the moment. Like a math word problem where they throw in all sorts of, like, the blue car is traveling at blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yeah. Do you need all the information? Which is important and which isn't? So
survival theory, that's kind of our dream with basically all of our work, is that get people off of screens to go outside. So thanks for stopping and sharing that.
Yeah.
And in a larger sense, that
would be great.
Everybody,
if you all disappeared because you were going
outside, yes.
Sorry, I gotta go because I gotta go for a hike. Sorry, I gotta go because I'm gonna go feed my birds. It'd be awesome.
Yeah. So thanks for sharing this. So a golden hawk.
But then a possum. It's like saying, what are the odds? We just talked about a possum.
That is crazy cool. Oh my gosh.
Although the world is magical in a lot of ways too.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh. Let's see. Needless fear goes away if you just accept that you are inevitably going to die.
That's a difficult one.
Yeah, that brings up a story. My brother in Thailand, and he was walking in this Buddhist garden. It was this beautiful garden, and he saw this little sign, and it had two people walking hand in hand. And he was like, "That's such a lovely sign." And he got closer to it, and then he saw that one of the people is a skeleton. And so I think that's often present in Eastern wisdom traditions is, and in Stoicism too, this reminder that if we remember that death could be imminent, we cherish life sometimes all the more. And so, yeah, there can be a value in that. Though it, for some people, like all these tools,
Right.
for some people it just freaks them out.
It won't
And
necessarily
so,
work for everyone.
yeah,
Or all of us all the time.
but I find it useful.
Yeah, especially when I feel when I'm taking things for granted or I'm really wanting to feel sorry for myself, I feel like that's a really great time for me that I tend to use the, oh, well, imagine if, hey, you didn't have this or you were dealing with this instead. And the instant kind of, wow, maybe I should not think that my life is so horrible. Maybe not poor me, but wow, look at everything I have. I think that's things that takes practice though, too.
Whatever you resist persists. So, Trish, that's exactly my experience. So, for so many years, I would have anxiety and I would try to fight against that feeling, and it won every time. It's so powerful. I think any of us that have experienced anxiety, it's an overwhelming kind of emotion that can hijack your everything, all your thoughts. So that is the key, I think, is recognizing that there's stories that are tied in with that and moving the mind away from the stories. That I'm able to do. And, I've gotten now to the point where I can notice, enough mindfulness, I can notice an oncoming story, a story arriving at the scene and just say, I know what that is. I know, brain, what you want to do. And I'm just going to shift over and look at the sunlight playing on the wall over there and move myself away from that story or, tell a different story.
Wow.
But I think this is a great turnout. I'm having conversations.
I'm glad that you're enjoying it.
Wow,
It's really fun.
thanks.
You guys, all of you are such really flexible thinkers. That's what I like. And I learn so much every time that we talk because there's so many things that I suddenly think, oh, I've never thought of something that way. And so I'm really grateful for everybody being here and just sharing thoughts and asking questions. It's these times are really fun for us, and the time goes by, and I think, oh my gosh, our girls are probably wondering, like, hey, when are we going to do that walk we were going to do?
Now, okay, so forgive me, survival theory, because I want to use your real name, but I'm not sure if I should, if that's okay with you or not. But correct me if I'm wrong. You were one of the very first subscribers on our channel when we first started it. Am I remembering correctly? Just like if you're listening.
If so, then you've seen like all the wrinkles that have happened over the years.
Yeah, I mean, that's a long time ago.
Synchronicities are really interesting. You should probably go buy a lottery ticket. Just kidding.
And then Kent mentions
I know.
Yeah, cool. Isn't it? It is weird. And I recognize that we humans are very good at noticing patterns, and that when we see patterns, we tend to notice more patterns. But there have been, I'm sorry, there's just been so many things in our life, synchronicities, that have been so bizarro that, I mean, come on. And so, yeah, so I tend to think that and I think you'd agree that the universe is more mysterious than we think, and our consciousness is somehow tied in with that. And I don't think it's from experimenting with like intention manifestation and stuff. I don't think it's as simple as some people try to say, but I do think there's something very powerful about non-resistance and sort of a surrender that's tied into it that has worked magic for us.
Okay. But anyway, so Becky said to tell another story, and we're talking about this. You should.
Oh, you think that's a good one? Do you think that's?
Well, it's kind of cool. No, maybe not.
Well, sure. Okay. Tell a story for the purpose of getting into a better vibration, but how we feel about what we think. Okay, so maybe this would. It's important how we feel. I just think it's kind of a magical. Okay.
I mean, it's a synchronicity, but it's also talking about magic.
Okay.
I mean, magic in a larger sense of not understanding how everything fits together, but sometimes it does in the most impossible ways. Truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah. So when I was 17, I spent 17, I spent 3 months in living in the woods at a survival camp where I was apprenticing. And it was a really cool experience um, in the sense that he was just starting his school and I didn't really have a lot of guidance. I kind of just was a wild thing for 3 months. But we did
Only for 3 months, because I've known you to be a wild thing for a lot longer.
but we did do some classes where we took people on these canoe trips and we'd camp out and do it for 3 days to a week. And it was on one of these that I had a very bizarre experience one night. And I want to remember what, uh, okay, how we feel about what we think. So, so what happened is my name up there was Red Fox. Jungiaja, I think is the right pronunciation, is what they would call me in Ojibwe. So it was Red Fox. And I loved foxes. And that was kind of my imaginary spirit animal. And on this particular night, deep in the summer, uh, I would go to sleep. I would never sleep in a tent there. Everybody else would, but I was super idealistic and would not.
No tents left behind.
Yeah, and my nights were exceedingly long every single night because there were tons of mosquitoes. And so I would just be in a half sleep state through every single night of that entire summer. But this night, I laid down, and everybody else got into their tents, and I closed my eyes and I opened them up a second later, and it was morning. And there was it was literally like that. I didn't even fall asleep. I just closed my eyes and I opened them, and it was morning. And it was incredibly disorienting. And as I woke up and I started looking around me, I saw fox tracks all over the camp. Like a fox had been right there inside our camp with us over the night. And so, in some ways, I imagined that I had transformed into this fox and become this. And I think when you talk about, I don't know if this quite fits in, Becky, but how we feel about what we think, even if that was just a bizarre sleep experience and then a fox that wandered in my imagination, I had turned into that fox. And it helped me through the rest of my time there to feel even more wild, even more natural. And I think it was a good lesson in the power of imagination. I'll never know what happened that night for sure, but just imagining that I had become a fox opens up a world of magic and possibility and makes me see the world differently. So right now I have a choice mentally. I can think there was a logical explanation, a rational explanation, and that makes me feel a certain way about the world. Or I can say, you know what, Ken, just believe that you turned into a fox. And that gives me a different feeling of the world and experience of the world. And I think that we can do this without, we don't have to be even duped by our beliefs. I call them conscious beliefs, where you take on a belief because you recognize that it affects your worldview and how you experience life. You don't have to believe it in a way of being convinced. I don't know if I'm making any sense here, but you can choose to believe it. And then it becomes a semi-reality that affects your whole worldview.
Well, yeah, we know just from some of the reading that we've been doing and watching some different TED Talks and things that there's some neuroscientists who have talked about our memories and how every time we call forth a memory, we shift it slightly. And of course, we know, just all of us as people in general, that when you have a scene of an accident or something, different witnesses and different bystanders see things completely differently. And so I think I agree with Becky in that imagination is just harnessing the power of your mind to choose to create what you want to perceive in a way that is makes you feel better, makes you be a better person. It's the whole, in a world where you can be anything, be kind. So if you can imagine anything, and this thing allows you to feel closer to nature, to feel, more connected with the world and with magic, and be your best self, then why not choose that? Um, I don't know. I think imagination can be very useful for us, and it allows us to see that maybe not everything is as cut and dried. Obviously, we've already had some coincidences and synchronicities here just as we've been talking. Um, you know, I don't know. I think imagination is really important.
Thanks for answering survival theory. And cool that you were inspired not to use insect repellent. I won't get into that. I think that's awesome.
There's so many stories and things we could talk about on any different topic.
Dreams and imagination, fake, made up. You believe that dreams and imagination are? Yeah. There's actually cultures that believe that the dream realm is either equally as real as our waking realm, or is the actual real reality, and that this is our dreaming realm.
Well, I mean, we know there's cultures out there, especially, I've heard a lot of maybe more quote primitive tribes in South America and things that we've read about, and certain other places where for them, their dreams, that's what informs your waking life. That's what you look to give you guidance. And there's some really fascinating stories about tribal groups of people knowing that outsiders were coming, and they'd be welcoming them. Hey, we've been waiting for you. And they're like, how did you know? And they're like, our dreams told us these people were coming. And, I don't know. I don't think it should be discredited. I think everything should be kind of examined and held up in your heart, as well as in the mind, to see what it looks like.
Litter picker, Becky, you guys you're speaking our language here.
Yeah.
We tend to see the world as very magical. We won't go down that rabbit hole.
Not today.
Oh, Anya and Sean, love your conversation there. Ooh, cool question by Christina. Okay. Dreams and magic. Yeah. Recorded live. Oh my gosh. Okay.
The thing is, I'm not sure, as we were talking in the very beginning of this, can we know what is right in the end for any given situation? And as we've talked about in our comments, it's all different perspectives. There's all different answers. There's all different experiences that lead us to different perceptions. And if we zoom way back up, how much of it is as important as we make it out to be in our human world? And I just think, it's really amazing that we can all ask ourselves and all be aware that maybe what we think of something is influencing how it's experienced, that coincidences can be more than that, and that can just be a choice too, to realize we don't have the answers. So, that whole not knowing is the wisdom. It's really amazing.
I want Becky and Christina to have a chance to answer this. I think we should wrap up here because we're going to try to end by 45.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you all a question here, and then have you two have a chance to talk about it. So we have had this thought to have our whole family on a live stream, and to do one where, how many of you have kiddos who would want to ask Mirabelle and Liliana questions? And would you all be interested in asking Mirabelle and Liliana questions?
Or us as a family, if it was questions about, hey, does this ever happen in your family dynamics, and what do you do about it? Or, I don't know, just gauging interest about those kind of different options.
And so, seeing if that's of interest, maybe we could put up a poll too on our community tab. But it would be great just to hear if that would be interesting at all. We'd love to have them. The simulation. So, okay, so I haven't heard of that person, Christina.
Okay.
Oh
my gosh.
Have you read Becoming Dungeon Master?
I'm sorry.
Because
that's so
that's
cool.
kind of the same thing.
I'm having a conversation. I'm like,
you just did a first cold shower?
Cool. What did you think about it? Oh, tell her that's so awesome.
Wow.
She should be proud of herself.
What was her
Yeah.
experience? What is she saying about it? Did she like it? Was it?
It's different all the time too. Sometimes you love
Oh,
it,
she
and
says,
sometimes
hey, cool to hear, Lily. Wow, that is awesome.
you were bringing up becoming dungeon master and asking if
Oh
because
yeah,
that
'Cause
book
that whole book
talks
is
about life as a simulation or a video game, and how could we prove that it's not, and if it is, I don't know. And sometimes I like that analogy. I'm a video game character or I'm a role playing character. How do I want to be in the world? How do I want to respond to things that come into my experience?
yeah.
Yeah, super fun.
Cool. Oh.
Oh, great! I misread it.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh.
just a different way of looking at things and asking different questions.
That was a fun one to write. It just kind of came out of us when we were in Hawaii because
Mhm.
so many people that came to ReWild U were had gaming addiction.
Yeah.
And over time, it came about like maybe it's not just about breaking that addiction, but transforming it so we can get addicted to this life as a game.
Sorry,
No kidding.
I'm laughing at a litter picker. Oh gosh, Anya says good, sweet.
Just let them talk.
Oh gosh, Trish,
I am making one right now.
everybody needs to give us like
bother
good
me
mojo.
about it.
It is very hard to make a clean audio, even if you have a good microphone and a good feed in and you have a good room. It's so hard to get it clean.
Yeah.
We have tried so many times, and so be patient. We would really love that.
Yeah.
For all our books, actually.
Give me a couple months. I was working on Diary of a Forest Monk, and we ran into a big where I think I have to do it over. So I said, I'm going to do Becoming Dungeon Master. And that one is much easier because it's in smaller chapters. So we'll keep working on it. Okay. So,
sometime we should talk about that too. We should just have a Becoming Dungeon Master and talk about simulation and matrix and all of that.
That's a fun one. Yeah, I guess there's tons of things we can do on these. We've been really enjoying these, and we're really grateful that you've been joining us. It's been super, super fun. Ooh, okay.
Yeah, I understand. And actually, I know a lot of people who just have a lot of driving. I'm talking to Trish here, where it's just easier to listen. I understand that completely. And in fact, I'm hoping some of you don't necessarily feel like you have to watch us right now, and you can just be listening to us while you're, making food for your animals.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there is that's built into it a little bit, to kind of turn our gaze away from it. I talk about that specifically in the book. It's kind of as if
maybe hasn't gotten to that part. Is that in the last part of the book?
It might be, where it talks about
life's going to try to help you be distracted all the time.
Purposely distract you. Yeah. So I talk about that specifically.
Oh, cool. We'll have to check that out, Christina.
Okay.
The simulation.
Yay. Okay. So we're going to try to wrap up here.
It's hard to stop.
I know. It's fun. We've really come to enjoy these. We're not going to promise that we're going to do this every weekend, especially coming up. We have some guests coming to stay and some other stuff, but we're going to try to keep up with this because we love it.
It's so much fun.
And it's just been fun. Yeah.
Sweet.
Modding Skyrim as we speak.
Oh.
Wow. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
Oh gosh.
Okay. Yes, and the girl's coming on. Okay.
Well, awesome. Okay. And we'll keep it up. And
thanks for that encouragement, everybody.
Yeah, at least now while it's winter for sure, because sometimes, at least where we are, I know all of you don't have snow, but where we are, sometimes when it's super cold, it's like, what more is there we can do? It's fun to talk.
See this guy again? Look at those teeth.
Oh man, I mean, let me put my hand up to it. It's like that would have been crazy. That would have been crazy.
Isn't that amazing?
I would be like, hi, today I'd like to tell you about my possum experience. And it would be like, my hand would be all chewed up.
Yeah, that's that fin too. I used to tell people these were dragons, a dragon skull, and they would tend to believe me.
Is there a child?
Come on in. Okay. Cool here too. Okay, we're wrapping up right now. Okay. So much love to you all.
Thank you for joining us. Oh my gosh.
And
so awesome.
We will talk soon.